Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Yep, I'm sitting here in the same outfit because I just recorded my last video, and I'm just, if you haven't checked that out, that's kind of like the intro to what this video is going to be. So basically I was talking in the last video about how in 2020 I want to do like a year of decluttering, and there are specific areas in which I would like to focus that decluttering, and one of them is of course my makeup collection. Now, when I say decluttering, I kind of don't necessarily mean just getting rid of stuff I already have, but mainly just like I'm still going to be purchasing new things. But mainly it's just kind of a goal to have a smaller collection by the end of 2020 than I have currently on January 1st of 2020. So as part of that process, I just did an inventory of all of my makeup products. And before I get into the numbers here, I want to just tell you guys what I included in that. So I included the obvious, like, you know, all the makeup products, but I also included like tools, so like brushes, sponges, things like that. And I also included perfumes. The reason I included perfumes is because I know it's just something I have way too much of. I always get those little samples, and like those honestly like last me a long time. I don't wear a ton of perfume, but then I also have like some full size ones that I've gotten as gifts, and it's just like one area where I really want to focus on trying to use those up because they just sit there. Like I'm not the best at remembering to use perfume. I usually just feel like I don't smell that bad and I use deodorant, so like it's fine. But yeah, so I included that in there, which a lot of people don't typically include in their makeup inventory. So I broke it down into different sections, and then I have a total number of products and tools, brushes, etc. For the end. And then I think what I'm going to do is I made myself a goal for the end of 2020 as like a total number. So basically the current number, well, let me just get into the breakdown, and I'll explain everything kind of at the end. So after going over everything, I'll start out with tools. So for brushes, I have a total of 10 brushes right now. Brushes aren't really a problem area for me. I don't tend to splurge on brushes because like they're not that exciting and fun to buy, and all the brushes I have honestly were like gifts or like really inexpensive brushes that I got at like the dollar store or stuff like that. So not a super concerning area for me. I think 10 is fine. Like obviously I need some different shaped ones. Like I need some for, you know, face products, some for eyes, you know, so having like I can't really ever get that down to like 1, you know what I mean? So 10 is not so bad. If I can keep that kind of where it is, like around in and around 10, I think would be totally acceptable. So next section I have is sponges and like poofs. So when I say poofs, I mean like those little fabric, like puffy things that you use to put powder on, kind of. Most people use brushes, I guess, for their powder, but I put mine on with like a poof. So I have a total of 7 of those. And that is because I have like a beauty blender for my foundation. I have a poof like for my setting powder, but then I also had bought some backups. So that's why the number is higher, because really I only use like 2. Like the sponge and then the poof thing. So that's why the number is a little bit higher than what it might normally be. So if I can cut that down to like maybe like 4 or so for next year, that would still give me the 2 essentials that I have and then 1 backup for each. Then I think that would be pretty good. But again, 7's not like insane. So I'm okay with it as it is. Next is foundations. Currently I have 3 foundations. My foundation routine is a little bit different because I mix together. Sorry, the sun is just starting to beam in here. I'll try and stay in the shaded area. So yeah, so my foundation routine is 2 different foundations that I use that I mix together. So that's why I'm pretty much always gonna have to have 2. So the fact that I only have 3 right now, it's because I just bought a backup because I'm running really low on one of the 2. So I'm almost about to throw that one away. So really it's almost like I only have 2 anyway. So 3, totally acceptable. I'm totally fine with leaving that as it is. Next is concealers, and I have 2 concealers. One that I use like to touch up like any acne spots, and then another one for the under eyes. I'm fine leaving that at 2, like not really planning to change that much in 2020. Next I have primers, and I actually have 5 primers. So the reason for this is because I also included any samples that I may have gotten. So I did have 2 sample primers, and then I have my foundation primer, my eyelid primer, and then I did buy a backup eyelid primer. So the fact that it's 5 right now, I think I should be able to get that down to like about 2, because I only ever really use like a face primer and then an eyelid primer consistently. So I'll just use up the samples, and then I'm sure I'll get into the backup at some point and not buy any more backups basically. So that's one area I think I can shrink down a little bit. Next is eyeliners. This one kind of surprised me, but then once I did the numbers, I realized what it was. So I actually have 16 eyeliners, but that's because I have like a big Sephora palette. It's this one here, the Sephora Chroma Color palette, and it came with 12 different colored eyeliners in here too. So that's what accounted for the majority of that number. This is tricky because although I don't really use or want or need 16 eyeliners, they are colored eyeliners, so they're like pink, blue, whatever. So they are going to be hard to use up. Like, those aren't really eyeliners that I would use on a daily basis. So as much as I'd like to see that number go down, I'm not sure if it will. Like, it will take a lot of effort to get through that many eyeliners in a year for me, like the colored ones. So kind of planning on leaving that kind of as it is, but if I can use up like 1 or 2 of those, that would be ideal. Next I put lip products all together, lipsticks, glosses, lip balms, like all of those things. I just lumped them into one category, and for that category I actually have 39. So that's way more than I need, way more than I thought I had, but it should be achievable to get that down a little bit. I do have, like I said, like lip balms in that category, and those I can just use up just at night and stuff to like moisturize and things like that, and I'm hoping to get that number quite substantially lower for next year, because I really don't use a whole ton of lip products. Like, I have like my go-to liquid lipsticks that I kind of use, and the other ones are just kind of sitting there in my collection. So that is going to be a focus area. Next is eyebrow products. I just have the one, the Anastasia Beverly Hills like brow wiz. So obviously it's at 1 now. I would like to keep it at 1. I can't really have none, so that's just going to stay how it is. Now, next I have perfumes, like I mentioned. I have 14, so about half of those are the little sample bottles. So I'm really going to focus on getting the sample bottles out. Like, I'm going to use them up and get rid of them, because they're going to be easier to actually remove from my collection faster. They'll be easier to use up. And then after that I have blushes. So turns out I thought I only had like 1 blush, but then I looked in some of my palettes, and I have some of those palettes that come with a blush and stuff. So once I counted all the palettes with all the blushes in each palette, because I didn't really include like palettes as its own category. I've counted every single shadow in my palettes instead of doing palettes as a whole, which I'll explain a little bit later. But anyways, once I counted all the blushes that I had in total from the palettes and the individual ones, I had 11 blushes. So my plan for 2020 is, at least right now, is not to buy any blushes, because 11 blushes should last me the entire year and then some. Next I have bronzers. I have 4 bronzers, again, a couple that were in a palette, like a holiday set palette kind of thing, and then one that's like on its own. Powders, like setting powders and stuff, I just have the one. It's my go-to. I'm gonna keep it at 1. I might it might fluctuate a little bit throughout the year if I buy a backup or something like that, but it's gonna stay in and around 1. Mascaras. I have 4 mascaras right now, and that is because I have 1 sample that is unopened that I plan to use after I run out of the current one that I'm using. And then I also have a waterproof one, and I don't normally buy waterproof mascara, but it was my sister's wedding this year, so I had to buy that just for that one occasion. So I'm hoping I can use that up this year as well and keep that number down to around 1 or 2, because mascara, it's just like you only really need 1 at a time. Next I have highlighters. I don't have any like single highlighters that I've purchased just for the sake of the highlighter. I do have a couple in those sets though, like in those holiday sets. So just counting those, I have 4. I don't tend to use highlighters, honestly. Like, at all. But I guess this will motivate me to kind of try and use those up. And then miscellaneous. So for miscellaneous, I just kind of included like eyelash curlers or like eyelash glue, like false lashes if I have any. I don't currently, but if I did, that's where that would go. Those oil dabbing sheets, like just little things like that that don't really fit in a category. And I have 10 of those. So like tools, like tweezers, things like that would all go into that miscellaneous category. Not really expecting much change over the course of the year for that. I don't plan to purchase more, but a lot of them are tools, like I said, that don't really fit into like the brushes category and things like that. So that'll probably stay around 10. And then the last category that you've all probably been waiting for is the eyeshadows. So like I sort of alluded to earlier, I did not count my eyeshadows like in terms of like how many palettes I have, just because I feel like not all palettes are created equal. I mean, I've got a couple of like quads, and then I've got some that have like 30 different colors in them. So like it's not really fair to count a quad and a 30 pan eyeshadow palette as like the same, because there's obviously way more product in the gigantic palettes. So what I did instead is I counted each individual eyeshadow pan in all of my palettes and each individual eyeshadow that I bought as singles. So that gives me a more accurate number, I think, of like exactly how many eyeshadows I have. And when I do my final count at the end of this year, I'm going to do the same method. So that way, even if I haven't, like say I haven't used up an entire palette, but say I've used like 2 of the 4 shadows in a quad, like completely, then my number will go down by 2, even though the palette is still in my collection as an item on its own. But like it's still like only really, it's hard to explain what I mean, but I think you guys get it. Like if I count the quad as 4 items, then by the end of the year, if I've used up 2 of them, then it's only 2 items instead of counting it as 1, and then at the end of the year it's still 1. You know what I mean? So I've counted them all individually. So my total number of eyeshadows altogether is 492. That is obviously by far the largest category in my collection. I'm not surprised by this. I love eyeshadow. I love collecting eyeshadow. But that being said, obviously at this number, I don't need any more. And I've already sort of bought some more that's in the mail. So it's going to go up a little bit from here, but this still counts. It's January 1st. This still counts as my starting inventory. So when all is said and done, my total number of products going into 2020 is 623. So obviously my objective for the end of the year is to cut that number down. So I thought a nice round number that's achievable, realistic, and still gives me some wiggle room to like maybe buy a few new things throughout the year would be 500. So I'd like to get that number from 623 down to 500 by the end of 2020. So like I said, some of the focus areas I'd like to work on is perfumes, getting rid of some of those sample ones, using them up. Lipsticks and glosses and things like that, using some of those up. Mascaras, like using up those waterproof one, like the waterproof one and the sample one and things like that. And like those areas will really help to cut down the final number by the end of the year. And then of course the eyeshadows. I'm always trying to use up my eyeshadows just because I have such a large collection of eyeshadows. So through panning and things like that this year, I should make some progress on that. The unfortunate thing though is that I'm only counting it as completed, like I'm only taking it out of the total if it's 100% panned, like not like just a touch of a pan, like it's got to be completely gone for me to remove it from the total. So that's why I'm sticking with like focusing on like things like mascaras and lipsticks and stuff, and perfumes, because I feel like those I'll be able to use up a little bit faster than an eyeshadow, which I might like be pretty successful in hitting pan on a lot of eyeshadows, but if there's any product left in it, it still counts. So that area, although it's my biggest section, the number might actually not change too much by the end of the year. I might still be around the 492 mark. Unless I really focus on like 1 or 2 shades and like use them to death, which I might try and do, but you know, I don't want to get burnt out and feel like uninspired because I'm having to use the same colors all the time too. So anyway, so that is my 2020 makeup inventory and my goal for the end of 2020 of where to have my makeup collection at by the end. So just to refresh, it's 623 now, and I would like to get it to 500. So I'm not really going to do like monthly updates on this really. Like I might do some declutter videos along the way, but I'm not going to go over the whole inventory every single time. This is kind of like a beginning of the year, end of the year, and you know, that's it. Kind of, you can just sort of guess in between where I'm kind of at with things as things come into my collection and whatnot. Anyway, so yeah, how does this compare to your collection? If you've ever done an inventory of your collection, I'd be really curious to know like what final number you came up with and like how many products you actually have in your collection, because I feel like mine's pretty outrageous, but then I've come across some other YouTubers that have like 10 times this much, I'm sure. So just curious what you guys got out of your collection, like total number, and what your goal is. Like, are you planning to sort of be more minimalist this year, or are you just kind of like, who cares? Like, just curious on your thoughts on this whole topic. So thank you for watching this video. If you can like and subscribe, that would be amazingly helpful. This is a brand new channel. I've said this in a couple of my more recent videos, but like, I did just start this channel mid-December, so it's only been around for a couple of weeks. And I would really, really love it if you could help me get to my goal for 2020, which is to reach monetization at 1,000 subscribers, because that would be exciting, and then I'd feel like a real YouTuber. So please like and subscribe, and if you like these kind of inventory type videos, stay tuned, because I am going to do another inventory of all of my clothing. So my next inventory will be my clothing inventory video, and that should be coming up soon. All right, so I will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.